everyone. Thanks for joining us for our next Facebook Live session. I'm Susanna with ATBS, and today we're going to be talking about our annual independent contractor benchmarking study. Every year we take the data that we have from our clients and we use it to analyze trends in the trucking industry and then make predictions for what the next year has in store. So today we're going to talk about that data from 2018 with our CEO and President, Todd Amon. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey everybody, I'm glad to be here.
If at any time during the broadcast you have some questions, go ahead and type those into the comment section and we will answer those as quickly as we can after the broadcast. So with that, I'll go ahead and get started. So Todd, how did owner-operators earn record high income in 2018 while at the same time running record low miles?
It's a good question. Really, Susanna, because it's not intuitive. I think most people think they have to work harder to make more money. That's kind of the way the world works. I know that's what you do. You work hard to make more money, and you think drivers would do the same, but 2018 was just kind of one of those years for trucking where things weren't what they have always been. So our average client ran 103,000 miles in 2018, and that was down from about 106,000 miles the year before. So it's the lowest miles we've ever seen, which is kind of amazing. 20 years ago, the average independent contractor used to run 139,000 miles. So you could say that drivers, worked less, they ran less miles. At the same time, the average net income for our clients went up last year from $60,000 in 2017 to $65,000 in 2018. So the net income went up $5,000. So in essence, I worked less and I made more. And when you really think about that, we were just in one of those markets that I could work smarter rather than harder. I didn't have to go out and drive a ton of miles to make the money that I wanted to make. I could actually be choosy on my loads and choose those loads that went where I wanted them to go. They paid me really good money. And, the end result was I worked less and I made more money. So, in our world, that's a great thing. We love it when our clients and the drivers that we work with can have a year like that. It was really fun conversations, and it's just awesome to see the end results. It was just a great year for truckers last year.
Definitely. So how much did the owner-operator population increase in 2018?
We always see in a market like we had last year when things are good, we see people attracted to doing the most that they can do and making the most money that they can make. And so we knew the population grew last year. It's always hard to get really good data. There's nowhere or no one that really tracks owner-operator population on a great granular level. So we kind of use estimates based on everything that we know, the people that we talk to, based on how much our client base grew. We believe the owner-operator population grew about 10,000 drivers last year, right around 8%. It was one of those years where you have a lot of drivers. To make the most I can make in trucking, I need to be an owner-operator, right? As a company driver, I make a decent living, but if I really want to control my destiny, I become an owner-operator. And last year was one of those years that a lot of folks said it's worth taking that risk. It's worth jumping in the market. Things are so good, I just want to do it. And so it's probably the biggest growth of owner-operator population we've seen in a long time, if not ever.
And what do you think the bottom line impact of ELDs was over owner-operator miles, rates, and fuel economy?
ELDs is a really good question. It seems like it's water under the bridge. We're a year and a few months past the ELD implementation date at this point. But ELDs were for sure the story of last year. It's all anybody talked about. So it had an impact on all those things for sure. We've already talked about miles were down last year for our average client. A big piece of that was just because of market rates, not necessarily ELDs. We estimate about 80% of our clients already had ELDs going into 2018, and so they weren't necessarily impacted. It was that true, I'm going to call them renegade independent contractor that was still running, 3 logbooks and driving 130,000 miles that was really impacted by ELDs. But overall, our industry certainly was limited in the miles we could drive by ELDs. So miles were down. The counter to that is that rates went up. When you have less miles that are available to drive with all the trucks on the road, there's less capacity to haul freight, and there's still the freight to haul. That means rates went up. That's why we had such an amazing market last year. And so ultimately things were great. Probably the most interesting thing that we ran into last year is the last part of your question, which is fuel economy. And last year was a year when fuel increased. We went from about $2.50 a gallon back in 2017 up over $3, even $3.25 in 2018. So fuel went up quite a bit. Usually when that happens, we see drivers slow down, less idle time, and they get better fuel economy. We saw the opposite of that last year. Our average client lost about a quarter of a mile per gallon, which is significant. That cost them $2,500, $3,000 in actual dollars as far as spent on fuel. And for a while we really couldn't figure out what was going on as we went through the year. But I think what we finally realized was it was just one of those years where drivers, number one, they just forgot about caring about costs because there was so much revenue to generate. They cared more about getting to the next load faster, and so they didn't care about driving 62 miles an hour. If the speed limit was 70, they were driving 70. They didn't care about their idle time. It was a good year. People were comfortable, so they just kind of forgot about the cost side of the business. It was all about revenue. So fuel economy went down last year, which is the first time we've seen that in about 5 or 6 years. Really interesting.
Mm-hmm. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about now kind of what's happening now, and then we'll move into what we think is going to happen in 2019. So recently, spot market rates have dropped. So what do you think is the cause of that, and what does it mean for owner-operators right now?
The spot market, we've all come, I think, in this industry to pay close attention to because it's a leading indicator of what's going to go on. I think are those spot market rates rising or falling? And last year was record year for spot market rates. And I'm going to use a word probably that isn't in the Webster dictionary, but I'm going to say we overcapacitized. It means we put too many trucks in the spot market. What happened last year is rates went through the roof because there weren't enough trucks hauling freight in the spot market. And to give you an example of that, if I was contracted with a fleet and operating for a fleet in a dry van business, I'm going to make somewhere between $1.50 and $1.60 per mile. It's kind of steady throughout the years. That's just what it is. Fluctuates a little bit with fuel surcharge. Last year, I could go into the spot market and I could pick loads off of load boards and I could make $2.35 a mile. So there was a differential of about 80 to 85 cents a mile. For me to go do that, to actually go in the spot market and run my own business, I got to do some things. I got to get my own authority. I got to get my own trailer. I got to book my own loads, book my own freight, collect the revenue. It's more complicated. All that cost me about $40,000 to maybe $50,000 to do that. So if I can make an extra $85,000 or $90,000 in revenue, and it's only going to cost me $40,000 or $50,000, I'm going to go to where that market is drawing me. And that's what a lot of drivers did last year. So we had a ton of freight, a ton of capacity move into that market. We flooded it, we overcapacitized it, and so the end result is we start off this year and we're in the exact opposite situation. Today, the difference between the spot market rate, which is about $1.85 for dry van, still around $1.50 to $1.55 if I'm contracted. So that 30 cents, today doesn't pay. If I'm going to go out and spend $40,000 to $50,000 to run in the spot market with my own authority, my own trailer, my own insurance, and I'm only going to make $30,000 doing that, it's a net loss of about $10,000. So we're kind of in another major shift where we're seeing a lot of capacity go out of that spot market and look for those longer term contract rates with shippers, that aren't going to pay as high as they do in the spot, but they give you more consistent long-term freight. So definitely a changing market this year.
Right. So what do you think the overall outlook is for owner-operators this year?
I don't like to put out a negative, pessimistic forecast, but I can say there's no way it's going to be like last year. The people that I talk to really almost feel like you have to take 2018 and set it aside. It was like one of those breakout years that you see once in your lifetime. And if we all expect, 2019 to continue and go up from 2018, it's just not going to happen. So really, you want to go from 2017 to 2019, and if we can continue on that trajectory, it's still pretty good. Last year was just a great year. There's no way about it. So things are going to slow down. We're in a more traditional year this year. We're just finishing the first quarter. We hear a lot of drivers complaining about low rates, slow freight. I can't get loads here and there. And, that's what we hear in the first quarter. The first quarter is always slow in trucking, except last year it was not. But almost always the first quarter is slow. We're coming out of the Christmas holidays. Shipping hasn't ramped up. People aren't traveling in the summer and eating, meat, drinking beer, and all those kinds of things. And so I think freight's got to pick up as we head into the second quarter and third quarter. So it's going to be more of a traditional year, but it's for sure going to be not as easy to make money as it was last year.
Okay. And then what are some tips that you might have for owner-operators to kind of mitigate that dip in income this year?
I think the most important thing that an owner-operator can do is, realize the value of who they are and what they are. When you choose to become an owner-operator, you choose to control your own destiny. And, I like to think of it like if I own a big fleet and I've got 100 trucks or 1,000 trucks or thousands of trucks, and the world changes as it is right now. Fuel goes up significantly, rates drop, the market changes, freight shifts. If I own a fleet of hundreds of thousands of trucks, it takes me months, sometimes a year or years to adjust to those changes. It's not easy to do. When I'm an owner operator, I can shift my business model literally in the afternoon. I can sit down today and listen to this Facebook Live event and realize what's going on, and I can change the lanes I'm hauling my freight in. I can manage my fuel costs better. So the people that are going to be successful and manage their business and make more money today are those that are going to realize that we're in a different market and I need to do things different. 2019 is going to be about the cost side of the business. 2018 was about the revenue side of the business. So today I need to really think about my costs and how much money I'm spending on fuel, and where I can get buying power on my maintenance discounts and those kinds of things.
Great. And are there any key factors that you think will separate successful operators or owner operators from unsuccessful owner operators in 2019?
I do. I like to say fondly that any dummy could have made money in trucking last year. It was really that easy. I mean, anybody could have bought a truck, got authority, and made money in trucking. That's just the kind of year we had. This year, you're going to have to be a smart, savvy business owner and pay attention to what's going on. And so I can't be the most choosy load person that says I'm only going to take loads that are over 350 per mile, and I'm only going to run below I-10 because I don't like driving in snow, up north. I've got to take the loads that are presented to me. I don't need to go haul really cheap, crappy freight, but I can't be as choosy as I was last year. I have to realize, what are my fixed costs? What's my break even? All those kinds of things. And I got to think about the business a little different way. And a little bit of what I already said, I really need to think about my costs this year. If we just talk about fuel for a minute, I guarantee everybody that watches this Facebook Live webinar, if you're an owner operator, you can save $5,000 on fuel this year. And I'll bet you just really didn't think about it that much last year because it was a good year. You can slow down a few miles per hour when it's not necessary. If it's important for you to get to the next destination, if you're running out of hours on your logbook, maybe you need to drive the speed limit. But when you don't, drive 62, save some money on fuel, idle a little bit less. Do those things that save you money on fuel. Look at all your costs. ATBS, we benchmark drivers against their peers, and we help you understand where you're spending more money than you should. And so, look at your P&L statement and figure out where you can save some money. Give your business consultant a call. We can talk through those things with you and give you some good ideas. So the people that are going to thrive this year, your net income does not have to go down. Last year was a record year. We traditionally see, after we see a really good year, we see things go backwards. So the average owner operator this year is going to lose $3,000 or $4,000. They're going to go from making 65 grand down to 62 grand this year. That's probably what's likely, but I don't have to be one of those people. I can, take my net income and at least keep it at 65, or maybe go to 68 or 70,000 if I do the right things. But I got to realize I'm in charge of my business, and I need to manage it, and I need to think that way. I can't just get in my truck, turn it on, take what comes my way and go drive. I got to really make sure I know what's going on.
Great advice. So what other economic factors do you think owner operators should prepare for this year?
I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you here's exactly what's going to happen in 2019. If we just accept things as they are, we know freight's going to be a bit slower, rates are going to go down a bit. We hope fuel's going to stay consistent around $3.25 per gallon. But let's think about the things that you can control. Let's just say fuel, we have a hurricane, or we have some refinery shutdowns, or we have some crisis in the Middle East and fuel spikes to $6 per gallon. That can happen any year. It's happened in the past. It could happen this year. You need to be prepared for that, because ultimately fuel surcharges and rates will make up for that. But when we see that instant spike, the pump price goes up immediately and rates don't go up for a week or two or a month. And there can be a cash flow lag of $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000. For some owner operators, that'll put you out of business. And so you always want to have money in the bank for those kinds of things, just in case something like that happens. We're still in the middle of some crazy trade negotiations. And so who knows what happens with China, and who knows what happens with Europe, and that affects, freight inflows and outflows. At the end of the day, what I know is me running my business and you as an individual truck driver, we can make ourselves crazy worrying about and thinking about all those things. What we do know is that we know how to drive a truck, we know how to make money, we know that freight is going to have to be moved around America. And so as long as we're someone who's willing to adapt and change, and we're paying attention to the things that happen, we can be successful in our business. That's why we became owner operators. So, I don't have that crystal ball, but I think it's just going to be a moderate year that we can go out and do things and make a decent amount of money.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all this information. It's been very helpful, hopefully helpful to you guys as well. If you have any other questions, again, please go ahead and post those in the comments and we will answer them after the broadcast. If you'd like to know more about what ATBS does and how we help owner operators, just give us a call, 866-920-2827, or visit our website at www.atbs.com. So thanks again, Todd, for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.
Drive safe and God bless. Thanks for all that you do out there.
Thanks.